All right, let's talk about our deal flow engine. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marco Palmero, founder of Ulysses. And what we do is we help private equity groups, investment firms, search funds, strategic buyers, and family offices in sourcing businesses for sale, motivated sellers that want to exit their business so that they can then acquire these assets and add them to their portfolio. Now, today I want to dissect our process for sourcing deal flow and explain clearly um, every step and kind of like every process that we follow when we go ahead and source deals on behalf of a third party. And I'm going to explain these steps, giving you examples of clients that we supported and that got quite a lot of deal flow when working with us. So, initially, what is deal flow in the first place? For those of you who might not know, well, we're talking about a constant stream of opportunities and transactions that comes your way. And so, in a regular business, those might be leads. If you were in the real estate industry, those might be opportunities, properties that you can list or that you can buy. In our industry, business acquisitions, we're talking about motivated sellers. So business owners that want to sell their company or they have an interest in selling their company in the near future and therefore want to initiate a conversation with a potential buyer to ultimately discuss an exit and how that can be displayed. So we helped, again, many different firms that have an active interest in buying businesses, and those can be individuals, investors, again, corporate firms. We've helped a variety of different people. In the reason why we were able to help so many different parties, so to speak, is because our deal flow engine is actually constructed to work across industries, across geographies, and it has performed really for anybody that has worked with us. Virtually everybody that worked with us got tremendous results out of it, independently of whether they were based in the United States, outside of the United States, and independently of the sector that they were targeting, no matter how small the sector might be. So, how is the system structured? Well, we follow a process that is broken down in three core pillars. The first is attractions. So we want to attract motivated sellers and prospect into our funnel. Then we have the process called nurturing or qualification, where we kind of like dissect the opportunity and make sure it fits our client's criteria or acquisition criteria. And then there is the connection. So when we book the qualified appointment with our client so that they can take the conversation to the next level and kind of like start negotiating deals and closing these transactions. So fundamentally, what we're doing is we are bringing opportunities to people's doorsteps so that they can spend all their time and energy on closing transactions instead of finding them. If you are currently sourcing deals or you're planning to start sourcing businesses for sale and you want to buy a company, then you will soon realize that sourcing deals is the most time-consuming task and also the most difficult one. Many people feel there are a lot of things that comes after that can complicate the deal. But the reality of it is you can hire experts to support you through these processes. And I'm thinking about due diligence, I'm thinking about legal paperwork, I'm thinking about quality of earnings. All these things can be outsourced to accounting firms, legal firms, and third-party providers. So many people believe that they can handle the initial origination process by themselves, and that is fundamentally the easy part, where in reality is just the exact opposite. Now, why is that? Well, because the attraction part is the most important thing you can have in any system, any funnel for that matter. Because without a good amount of opportunities, then all the steps that come after are useless, really. If you don't have enough deals that are coming to your door on a consistent basis, then you cannot see enough opportunities, and very few of them are going to end up at the bottom of your funnel. That is because, of course, not all deals that you're going to see are going to be a good fit. Not all the ones that are going to submit an offer to are going to be perfect, and so on and so forth. And so as you filter through all these steps, you're going to end up with a limited amount of deals that you can actually close. So the flow that you generate in the very beginning is actually the most important thing. If you don't have enough flow, very low chances that you're going to be able to buy a business or multiple businesses. And that's exactly what we do and what we help people do. So, as I said, attraction is the first part. Now, attraction is when we go ahead and start looking for opportunities that match the client's criteria. So you might have specific buy boxes that you want to follow, revenue size, geography, type of people that you want to connect with, type of company that you want to connect with, industry, sub-industry, and so forth. We use these initial filters to screen opportunities and just find the targets that have a higher chance of being potential deals for you. Because of course, before we start originating deals, we don't really know if the person we're going to connect with is interested in selling the business, right? It's almost like a sale. When you're selling a product, you might have signals that a person is interested in that particular product or service, but until you put them into your funnel, you're not going to know 100%. So we first want to take educated guesses around your niche. And the truth is, we want to filter out all the people that are not going to be a fit. For example, if you were to buy a home health facility, we wouldn't look at plumbers. That's just trying to boil things down to the very essence. But another important point in the attraction process is negative filtering. And I'm going to give you the example of this client to explain what I mean by this. So there was a person that came to us that wanted to buy a business in a very specific niche. We're talking about a few thousand companies in the geographic area that he was targeting. So a very limited pool of people. And his concern was, of course, well, first, are there enough targets that I can reach out to? The answer is yes. But then the second question was, well, how can I find these people? Because attraction might put a lot of people into our funnel, but if we're not specific enough in prompting, our system, and we don't collect the right data, we might end up with people that are not a fit for me in the first place. So how did we solve for that, and how we were able to find exactly the few thousand companies that he was looking for? Well, the first part is clarifying with him the search criteria. But then we did something called negative filtering, which basically excludes all companies that fall outside certain parameters. And so instead of saying what we wanted to find, we focused on what we didn't want to get. And that was kind of like a reverse engineering process that we can often go through when we work on very specific searches. Because if you're looking for businesses that are very specific, they might be in a niche sub-industry that is not something that you can Google that easily, right? You cannot find easily, calibration companies that are a sub niche of manufacturing. So a good way to look at the problem is, let's exclude all the companies within the same sub-industry that are not for sure calibration businesses, and then focus on the difference. So that's what we did with this client, and we started, pulling 3-4 opportunities every single week that he could talk to, and we kept ramping up the pipeline over and over again, so he could take like qualified appointments with people that were actually the company he wanted to buy. And that was the first step, like attraction into the funnel. Now, how do we do the attraction part? Well, tons of different ways we can go about doing that. There are videos that are more technical in nature where I explain all that. We talk about multi-channel outreach systems, cold email, LinkedIn outreach, SMS, cold calling, really a lot of channels in combination that we can leverage to reach out to business owners directly without an intermediary and then start the nurturing process once they raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested. So if you're interested in digging deeper into what are the channels that we utilize in all these technical aspects, go check other videos on our YouTube. They're explained over there, and you will find a little bit more context about that in these videos. But the first thing is the attraction part. So we covered that, and the more detailed you are in defining your niche, the better the attraction mechanism will work, because also from a messaging perspective, we're going to have the ability to reframe the message to resonate with that particular niche. Because again, taking the example of healthcare and plumbing, I wouldn't want to talk with a medical doctor the same way I talk with a plumber. Maybe I wouldn't want to use the same outreach channels that we use for one person compared to the other, because I know somebody is going to be more receptive to a certain channel, others to another. So we want to balance these things to create an attraction mechanism that ultimately works for your specific case. And that's ultimately what we do. If you want to check out how we do that, there are going to be links below. There's also a step-by-step system for the technical setup in case you want to build it on your own. We made it available very cheaply for everybody so that you can plug and play it. If you don't want somebody like us to take over the process and source deals for you, you can just plug these resources into your business and run them on your own. But now that we covered the attraction mechanism, let's talk about the qualification process. So the middle of the funnel. Once we have people that are on target, that reply with some sort of interest in potentially selling their business, how is it that we can now filter them even more so that we can almost guarantee that every appointment or every meeting our clients take is going to be on target and it's going to be an opportunity that is worth pursuing? Well, here we get into the qualification process, and I'm going to tell you another story about one client that we helped, because I think it's kind of like helping with this process. So a person came to us, and the concern that he had was that fundamentally he was looking at a lot of opportunities listed in public databases, broker sites, and these places. And the challenge it was facing was that most of the deals that appeared to be good on paper ultimately ended up not being what he was looking for, because there was lack of data available to make an accurate decision. And ultimately, he was just browsing around, hoping to find, one deal out of 25 that might have been a good opportunity and that actually could have fit all the parameters that it was targeting. So how did we solve for that? Through the qualification system. Well, we created a process that, one, was able to clearly identify whether the search criteria that he had were matched, and then, without being too intrusive with the business owner, it was able to probe for information before a call was actually taken. Different ways we can go about doing that. It can be through a questionnaire, it can be through a Loom video, it can be through a screening call. Many different ways you can do that. But the point is, with this person, we implemented the system, and in 7 days, he found a deal that was a 10 million revenue company, 2 million in EBITDA, that was ready to exit right away. And in the next 30 days, he found probably 10 opportunities more that he then booked in his calendar. And we're continuing to book qualified, sellers into his pipeline as we speak. So the way we address that issue that it was having with on-market deals is by creating a filtering system that was tight enough to get all the data that he needed, but not too tight that kind of like prospects were just going away because they were just not interested in going through all these dances before they actually took a call with the buyer. So we kind of like found the right balance between the two things. And for those of you who might wonder, well, Marco, what is the right strategy for building this qualification process? Well, I think that anybody who would tell you there is a unique solution for that would be lying, because it's all about testing. Different markets, different industries, different geographies, countries will react differently to the way you try to qualify prospects. For example, the United States are very saturated as a market, which means people are less inclined to go through a lot of steps before they get to a call, at least in our industry, because their time is limited. They've been approached multiple times. And so, one, you need to be cutting and very different compared to others. Plus, your proposition need to be strong, and at the same time, you need to have a few elements that you can collect quickly and then get them on the call. Otherwise, you are at risk of losing them, and you won't get any results out of booking calls with qualified sellers. In other geographies, that might be completely different because maybe they're less saturated. So people are not used to the process. And despite the fact they might need a little bit more of education around what is it that they need to do to get on a call, you can still collect a lot of data up front, like questionnaires, 10 questions long, kind of like forms and all these sorts of things. And of course, it all comes down to motivation. I'm sure you're going to say, well, if the guy's motivated enough, it will give me all the data I need up front. Well, that is true, but it's also true that people that have been contacted multiple times might be a little bit more resistant towards doing that over and over again, especially if they tried with somebody before and they ended up with a buyer that was not trustworthy or was not the right fit for them. So they might be tired of it. So the point I'm getting at is we want to mitigate that and adapt the strategy based on the market, the niche, the geography that you are targeting. And that's what we did for this client. A completely opposite example was another person that we supported outside of the US. In that case, we were getting probably 50, 60 opportunities every single month, like clockwork. So it was a huge amount of opportunities that we were able to collect. But what we realized was, well, this process is working well, but the call quality and the motivation of these sellers is not at its peak, is not matching what we really need. So we decided to add even more friction in the qualification process, making it super hard for people to get on a call with our client. And that ultimately led us to a little bit less opportunities, 30, 40 per month, but still the quality was super, super high. So the point I'm getting at is the qualification process is probably the most adaptable pillar of the entire strategy. And it is something that we generally build with the client as we go through our weekly check-ins, because we generally check in with the client once a week over a call, 30 minutes, to see how that process is progressing, feedback on the call, potential adjustments, all these sorts of things. We go through all these things and then define how that qualification pillar can be adjusted to improve results and improve outcomes. And those are just a few examples that I gave you of clients that we actually helped, and we kind of like supported in addressing that issue. If you want to build a similar system, by the way, again, there's more information below with our links. You can check out the information. We generally work on these bespoke engagement with just a few people per month. So slots are generally very limited, but provided we have availability, we can consider working together and see whether or not we're actually a match, because you might be targeting something that we cannot actually fulfill. So you need to check out that to find out more. But let's now talk about the third and last step of the entire strategy, which is confirming the appointment, booking the call. This is where a lot of times you might get stuck and people might not get the results that they need, especially when they source deals on their own, because they might get some initial flow and initial interest around the outreach that they do, but then they don't have a strong enough qualification process and an effective enough strategy to get people on the call quickly. And ultimately, they end up losing a lot of leads and a lot of motivated sellers in this case, because they are not effective at booking them on calls and having them show up. This is something that we struggle with as well back in the day when we were building the initial system. and the deal flow engine that we now run for our clients. But I want to share kind of like an example of that and how we helped one client, an institutional client, more like an advisory firm, in sourcing deals predictably without kind of like overcomplicating the process and making it, I would say, too hard for the motivated sellers to get on the phone. So the issue that happened with this advisory firm that wanted us to bring them deals was that they came to us saying, well, we're struggling in getting people on the phone and booking appointments with people that are qualified. And we are generally quite good at handling them once we get them on the phone the first time. But what we're struggling with is that it's simply impossible for us right now, one, to do the effort to get them on the phone, and two, get enough appointments that are actually a fit. And the challenge that we're facing is that from the moment they say yes, then we start an infinite follow-up process that never leads to a call in most cases, and we just lose time, effort, and mental energy in chasing people down. So what we did for them was just increasing, kind of like reducing the latency, I should say, from when the lead was saying yes, I'm interested, to when we were booking a call. Because what we noticed, especially in our industry, is that speed is king. I mean, this is something that is true for a lot of industries, but especially when we're talking about speaking with business owners that are interested in selling, that are generally people that are very busy, a lot of things going on. It is important to be effective in the way you create your campaign and you manage your flow so that you can get these people time. You can get their time on the phone and ultimately make sure they show up. And so one of the things that we did for this client that ultimately brought them 15 opportunities in 30 days was basically saying, okay, from the moment the person says yes, how long would it take us to get them on the phone if the guy was really interested? And we said, well, if we build up the system in the right way, maybe we use AI to improve speed, we can get back to them in less than 60 seconds and then qualify them accordingly. We can potentially book a call in less than 3 minutes if the person is ultimately qualified, ready, and wants to take action. And that's exactly what we did for this client. We said, okay, we're going to build a system for you, and that is part of the deal flow engine that we run for clients when we work with them in a bespoke way, that basically books the calls right away and is able to detect whether or not the target is a fit. So you don't put more friction that is needed between you and the prospect, but you make it actually very easy for them to confirm an appointment. What this advisory firm was struggling with was actually the fact that they were doing all the bookings and reservations manually. So they were sending people slots about their availability, they were confirming them, then they needed to book them, send them a calendar invitation. Sometimes the calendar invite went into spam, so people didn't see it, they didn't got them on their calendar. All these sorts of issues were complicating the process, leading to a call, and they were just making it very hard for the motivated seller to show up. So the lead was not incentivized to get on the phone. And so first thing we did is, okay, reduce friction. From the moment the person says yes, if it checks all the boxes, let's book them on a call within 60 seconds. Let's share the slots with him, and let's just make sure he gives us an answer that is as short as possible. So he needs to take the least amount of effort. And then our system in the back end confirms the appointment, sends out the invite that is delivered to them, and they actually see it, and ultimately follows up to make sure they show on the call the day the meeting is supposed to happen. Those might seem like little things, but they're actually the huge differentiator between getting a constant pipeline of deals and just chasing people and following up with them over and over again, waiting, for them to give some sort of response. If you're able to make it very easy for them after they say an initial yes, then they are going to show up on a call and the process is going to be very smooth for you. And that's how it went for these advisors that we supported as clients. And again, the process itself is pretty straightforward. As I said, three core pillars: attraction, qualification, and then call booking. It works for private equity groups, it works for search funds, it works for family offices, strategic buyers, advisors, even brokers. So anybody who wants to find deal flow gets access to a deal flow engine that we run on their behalf with full transparency on the back end, so that they can see how the pipeline is built and they actually see what we're doing in real time. And then they get to focus all their time on closing the transactions instead of finding them, because we take care of the sourcing process on their behalf. So in a nutshell, you have little to no time to find the deals. You want somebody to do that on your behalf. We can take that process off your shoulders. You then allocate all your resources and time towards closing deals. That's in a nutshell what the deal flow engine does and what we do for our bespoke clients. So that is, in essence, how we source deals. If you want to work with us and kind of like have us run this process for you, again, there's going to be a link below that you can check out and review. Again, very few people that we support on these specific packages, but you might say, okay, I just want to build the infrastructure and run it on my own. In that case, there's a program that we made available very cheaply where you can basically plug and play the templates that we use in the backend, use them for your own benefit, and run the system on your own. Of course, that will require a lot of manual labor on your hand and a lot of oversight. If you're okay with it, just go and check that out. Very valuable resource. But instead, if time is a constraint and if you want somebody else to take care of the process of finding the people, qualifying them, and then getting you deals on the phone, then this is what we can help with in a bespoke way, customized to your needs. And again, the process is simple. Deal flow engine, three pillars: attraction, qualification, call, and that's pretty much it. So if you're interested in that, check out more about our resources, and I will see you in the next one.